Paul, man, you are like the toughest act to follow. So like, I have no stories of gunpoint or anything else. So thanks a lot for all that. It's appreciated. So I'm gonna I had like an hour, so I'm gonna go down to like 15 minutes because how do you follow that? I'll give you a quick snippet. Most of you guys, I know most of you guys, other than the Nebraska guys, but we talked a little bit. I'm a lawyer, so I practice law at a large law firm in Kansas City before I joined the foundation. And similar to a lot of people that had spoke, I lived just for myself. You guys have probably heard this, but so when I was a kid, I had a drug problem. My parents drugged me to church on Sunday, Sunday nights, Wednesday. So I was always there. So my mom and dad joke I was born on a Friday, I was in church on a Sunday. So I was a church kid all growing up. And really, I mean, your typical story, saved, baptized at 7, went to church camp, 13, rededicated my life to Christ, and everything was great, right? No, I had all sorts of, the sexual sin. I had one of the gifts and curses in my life is that God has given me a quick tongue. And so as a lawyer, people are like, that's fantastic. You can argue with anybody. You can think of a quick thing. And when you're a teenage kid hanging out with older kids, I could cut down anyone faster than anybody else. Like, it was great. I used to make the big guys on the basketball team cry because I could out-cuss them and just tear them down emotionally with my tongue. Which is not such a great thing. It's really not. It's not. And so but I knew, it's funny, I knew when I was a kid growing up, like in school, like I wanted to be a lawyer. And my mom was a lawyer. My older brother, he's a lawyer, and said, that's kind of the path I wanted to go on. So went to college, played basketball. After that, went into law school. And really, when I was in basketball in college, I had 2 guys disciple me. Really, 2 older guys came alongside. We got in the Word. I mean, yeah, when I went to college, it was, if anything, I went too far on the legalist side. I mean, it was extreme. It was kind of the Baptist kid of I don't drink, I don't chew, and I don't go with girls that do. And I was I was almost isolated myself in college. But it was a good thing because I think in my personality, I would have gone way far the other way. That's kind of how I do. If I'm doing something, I'm going all in. And so I went to law school, and it was funny just the way God equips you because I'll come back to this a little bit later, but when law school thought, hey, if you have a quick tongue, you should get into litigation. So that means getting into the courtroom, doing trials, those things. So I went to work at a law firm and started immediately getting into trial work. I had 2 jury trials and 3 bench trials in like my first 3 years out of school, which most lawyers will have 2 jury trials like their entire career. And so had a lot of success and really was discontent. I used to represent a lot of doctors and hospitals. And I'll never forget when I was, in my 20s, and I was doing a trial deposition of a lady down in Tampa, Florida, and the plaintiff's lawyer, so that was the person that was suing my client. I represented a doctor. We flew down together. He was from Kansas City. He was a friend of mine. Like, we were going to do this deposition, and then we were going to hang out on the beach, and we had all day planned out. Like, this is great. Like, this deposition could take 30 minutes. So I go, and the deposition is of the decedent. So that's the person that died because of the medical treatment. It was her son that died. So this is the mom. Super simple deposition. Basically just had to figure out, like, hey, did your son support you? Kind of damages. I'm kind of walking through the questions in my mind. I go to meet this lady and I say, hi, ma'am, my name's, this is before the deposition started. It was videotaped, so I'm used to video cameras and microphones. I said, hi, ma'am, my name's Evan Lange. I represent Dr. Roberts. And this lady looked at me with not an ounce of bitterness in her heart. And she said, do you represent the doctor that killed my son? That was the first time in 2 years I realized somebody had died in the case I had worked on. It was just a case. I was just trying to, do the best job for my client, make sure that we didn't have to pay money. I had never recognized that a life was actually lost. I said, I can't do this stuff anymore. Cannot do this. Which most people, when you have like that kind of realization, you go and do something like that's meaningful. For me, I said, no, I'm going to go work for the law firm that pays me the most money, right? So I said, I'll get rid of that stuff. I don't want to represent people that kill people. I want to represent big companies that can pay me the most money. So I went to work for a really large law firm in Kansas City, and a couple financial advisors in here. So you guys understand this business. I went to work for a senior partner at a really large law firm that represented the largest construction companies really in the Midwest, almost in the world. And what was kind of unique, there was a lady, and she was retiring in 5 years, and I was her succession plan. So she was giving me her book of business. So you guys are building your business and everything now. I had it all set out to the extent where there's a show, and I don't really watch like lawyer shows, but there's one, I can't remember what it is. You guys, if you watch lawyer shows, you would know. It's kind of like the high profile lawyers that are flying around doing everything. That was like my lifestyle. So part of my practice group at this large law firm was that we had a house in Key West that I could go and use whenever I wanted. I was on the top floor of a really big building in downtown Kansas City. I got paid way too much money possible, and all this stuff was set out. I mean, so much so that my wife and I were like, do we buy our house in Key West first, or we buy our house in Colorado first, and we go skiing? You know, what do we think of? We're not even in our 30s yet, and we didn't even have any debt. I mean, we owed maybe $10,000 on our house. Everything was paid off. We gave a bunch of money away. I was a deacon in my church, so I was the only person in our 20s that was a deacon in the church. I thought, okay, we're living the life, right? Nope. I was miserable. I was absolutely miserable. And I'd go, what is going on? Like, I don't get it. Like, just had our first kid and just did not feel content. And I was in a small group at the time. This small group is kind of fun because it was actually at a church that my wife and I didn't go to. But those guys that discipled me in college, they were in it. And so we were still friends, still really close connected. We were still just doing life together. We read this book called Radical by David Platt. It's a great book. It'll mess you up if you read it and you actually want to live it out. And they did. So two of my friends, one was a guy that was at Cerner, so a big company in Kansas City. He managed close to 300 people. So, I mean, he had worked his way up that ladder. And the other guy was taking over a business for his dad. His dad owned a business in town, really successful. Another guy was the youngest vice president at Commerce Bank. All successful careers. We read the book Radical. All three of them in August 2015 quit their jobs, sold everything they had, and their families are now in Ankara, Turkey, planting churches for the next 10 years. And these guys have kids my age, so they've all actually all had babies while over in Turkey. So they're in one of the dark, Turkey, for the record, it's the most lost country you can go to. 70 million people in Turkey, there are only 5,000 Christians. That's like 0.000001% Christians. Very, very dark country. Oh, and by the way, it borders Syria and Iran. So that's where Turkey's located geographically. So anyway, that's where some of my best friends are. This is missionary for 2 years. Yep. Yeah. So Pastor Bronson was in jail. I actually got to speak with him at an event last September. So we got to speak and kind of do it together, which is cool and terrifying because right where he was, that's where my friends are. So. Anyway, so I am at the law firm and I am miserable and my friends have left and now my wife and I are going, okay, what are we doing? This cannot go on. So I was telling Stan this morning, I finally prayed that prayer, which is again really dangerous. Like, okay, God, wherever, just send me. Like, I will do anything, just whatever it is. And I kept waiting and I kept waiting. And then one night I was looking on a Missouri bar website. That's not like a bar, like drinking bar. That's like it's courtroom lawyers bar, a website. And the foundation was looking for a lawyer. So at that time we were affiliated with the National Christian Foundation, but they were looking for a lawyer, which was weird. I thought, what does a Christian foundation need a lawyer for? ended up applying, saying, I don't have a chance of getting this job. I get an email back from my boss, Bill High, within hours that said, hey, let's have a phone call tomorrow. Bill, the first question he asked me when I do a phone interview with him the next day, and I'm in my office. Stinson, our law firm, we just remodeled, so all of our offices were really nice glass you could see in, and just really cool and swanky. Had this awesome office. And I'm sitting there and I'm overlooking the Power and Light District, is my office faced south. And Bill, the first question he asked me is, hey, Evan, how'd you find Christ as your Savior? Tell me your testimony. And I just lose it. I just start crying my eyes out. My secretary's outside my office. She's looking at me. Now my paralegal's going over going, this guy lost his mind. What is going on here? And I'm like, okay, God, I don't know. I didn't know anything what was going on, but that led me to go and work at the foundation, where mainly what I get to do is help business owners and it's help them give things that are not cash. So you heard Marty Hepp earlier. We're going to show a video here in a second of another guy that I got to help out, which is just awesome. And it's funny, again, how God equips you. God does not usually call the equipped. He usually equips the people that are called. And I am definitely in that category. I was not equipped to do this work, but it was amazing just to see how God has equipped me over the years to do the work that I get to do. Again, helping great business owners and people give generously. So one of the people, so there's the connection. 10 years earlier when I was in law school, I took all these tax classes from this guy. And this guy, his name Chris Hoyt, he's a tax professor still at UMKC. Great guy. He's really funny. Not a whole lot of the law professors are funny, especially not the tax guys are funny. I just thought he was funny. And I did great in all of his classes. If you don't know how law school works, it's all on a forced curve. So when you go into a class, you're in a class of like 50 people. There's one grade, and that's on the final. So you have one grade. There's no homework assignments or anything else. You can miss every class. You take the final. That's your only grade, and that's on a forced curve. So out of 50 people, there will be one A, some A minuses, some Bs, a lot of Cs, Ds, and then a couple of Fs. Every class. So there is not like, if JC and I both got a 97% on the test, doesn't matter, I could get an A and you could get a B+. Like that's just how it works. It's all on a forced curve. So super competitive. So if you ever want to know why lawyers are kind of a-holes, it's because the school like forces you to be in this competitive nature. As a basketball player, I loved it. Oh, I loved it. You get to win. Not only do I get to beat a test, I can like beat my classmates. So I loved law school. So I took all these tax classes from this guy named Chris Hoyt. I did great in all of his classes, but I said, I am never going to touch taxes at all. I could care less. And then what gets to be fun is Chris Hoyt is the expert in the United States of gifting S corporations to charity. So if you don't know this, 80% of all small businesses are taxed as S corporations. There's a lot of complexity to it. So I work with lawyers all over the country. Atlanta, DC, California. When they find out I'm from KC, the first thing they say is, oh, do you know Chris Hoyt? I'm like, yeah, I saw him every day for 3 years. We still have lunch together. We kept in touch. Like, so it's just, again, like I didn't want to do that at all. But yet, like, God uniquely equipped me to do exactly what I'm doing, and even so much blessed me that I got to be trained in it 10 years beforehand. So it's funny how it works. All right, so we're going to talk about generosity quickly. I'm going to show you a video. So if you're on the CBMC site, the Attribute Study 6 is where I'm going to talk about a lot. That's my daughter when she was really little. Is where a lot of this information's at. And so here's a video of Steve Trice, so also in Oklahoma. And he's kind of the intro video of Attribute 6. So let's hope this works, and it should go out of that speaker. Yeah. If you don't know Steve Trice or have heard his story, Steve's also wrote a book and very big contributor to just of his time and reputation into CBMC. So really, really great guy. down in Oklahoma. But if you didn't hear that, he gives away half of their profits away every year. Half their profits away, which is just unreal. All right, so a little thing that he said, stewardship is pretty easy to understand, but it's really hard to internalize. I own nothing and God owns everything. It is super easy to say, and yet I bet if you see somebody take your car out of the driveway and start running down the road that way, you probably chase them and say, give me back my car. It's really hard to live open-handed in our life. I was actually with there's another video, Scott probably saw it. There was a business owner couple, they're out of Memphis, and it's Alan and Catherine Barnhart, but they just put out another video, and their company, $500 million in revenue every year, great company. They give away almost all of their profits every year. Extremely giving family. She had a really interesting line in a video that she said, because when they got out of college, they were going to be missionaries. And instead, they went into the business world. And she said after they had grew their businesses and everything else, she said, I don't think I can afford to be a missionary anymore. And she'd done hundreds of millions of dollars, but I couldn't afford to be a missionary anymore because you have so much stuff. It actually weighs you down. It confines you. It constricts you. And so, we first have to understand if you have a lot, if you have a little, this is to the ministry guys too. I mean, this is where, sometimes in the ministry, we feel like there's a scarcity mentality. Oh my goodness, how are we going to raise this much money? How do we do all of this? We serve a God He is infinite. He is always creating and is a God of abundance. So we have to keep that mentality. So he owns everything. And what we're really going to talk about is generosity, which I love because I talk to people about generosity every day. I've been doing it for the last 5 years since I've been at the foundation. And all of these words, I speak to myself every day because I struggle with it every day. It is so hard to live a fully generous life. And you'll see why in a second. It's kind of important to lead with the why. So why do we need to talk about generosity? One, the United States is losing in this. In the United States, across the board, Christian, non-Christian, people give about 2% of their income annually. Evangelical Christians, so Christians that would say the Bible is the inerrant word of God, Jesus is the only way of heaven, gives 2.5% of their income annually. So I know Stan said we don't believe in don't worry about the tithe anymore, but at least the tithe is 10%. We're not even close to getting to that level, 2.5%. And that has stayed that way basically since the last 60 years. Even further. It's changed one time. It's gone up. There's been a couple years it's gone down. The 1 year went up to 3.3% was during the Great Depression. So when we actually had very, very little, people actually gave more of their income. Yeah, please.
You know the answer to this, I bet. I think that I've heard also that the higher the household income, the less they get.
I can only know anecdotal evidence of that. So it's interesting because I'm a lawyer, I am not a pastor. And so because I'm a lawyer, people feel very comfortable in sharing their financial situation with me. So people hand me like their tax returns all the time. And so when I go and pull a tax return, I'll see somebody, this person made $5 million this year. And they might be very generous compared to me. They maybe gave $100,000 away. But from a percentage standpoint, that's really, really low. And so I would say that's, just from the anecdotal things that I've seen, it's yes. By the way, God really cares about generosity too. So, he knows a lot about this. Yes, sir.
I'm a
Jim.
tax professional.
There you go.
Just from observation
There you go.
of tax returns.
Yeah.
And that is, that generally speaking, lower income people
Give
more.
Percentage-wise, yes, yeah, and I would agree. And here's the thing: think about this when you have a higher income. What's the makeup of the United States? Is it if my income increases, do I usually stay in the house that I first bought? Do I usually drive the car that I just had? Do I usually keep all the stuff that I had back when I was in college? No, we buy a bigger place. We buy more stuff. We spend way more on ourselves. And yet our giving usually stays percentage-wise.
That stays the same as
It does. Yep. So, yeah. Oh, and by the way, God really cares about this. If you didn't know this, there are 2,350 verses in the Bible on money and possessions. Specifically on money and possessions. If you want to think of like a comparison, there are 280 verses on love. 280 verses on love, 2,350 verses on money and possessions. God cares about this, and it's because it's a big deal, especially in the United States. I'll give you one other kind of anecdotal thing I'll share, and this is another just impactful. Just because Paul shared like such intense stories, I feel like I have to share intense stories.
You're a competitive guy.
Yeah. This one, so no. A lot of what I get to do is help business owners gift a portion of their business before a sale. That's over half of what I end up doing. So somebody's selling their company, they decide to gift some of their partnership interest or their stock in their company before the sale happens. There's tremendous tax benefits to doing that and charitable benefits. It's literally millions more dollars that goes to to charity just from taxes. Taxes instead go to charity. It's really good. So I was working with this family, two guys, best friends, and they started a business together, and they'd started from scratch, grew it, and they were going to be acquired, and they're 50-50 partners, and the sale was for $286 million. So, and I remember this number very specifically, and you'll know why here. So $286 million split 50-50, so each of them get 143. Both partners, extremely solid believers, and so both had gifted a lot. They had probably gifted in the range of, $20-30 million worth of their stock, maybe even more, because they'd done multiple gifts kind of throughout the planning stages. Both just really were excited about being able to give greater than they ever have because they never really had cash flow. And so I had sat in numerous long meetings with their financial advisor and their attorney. Really, their financial advisor was key into their planning, and so I really worked closely with them and the families. And we got to the point where it's probably within a few weeks of the closing of the deal. And I am driving for the Kansas City guys. I live in Lee Summit. I work in Overland Park. So I'm driving through the Grandview Triangle. I just got out of traffic. It's like 7:30 on a Monday morning, and I get a call from this advisor, and he's from Indianapolis. And I go, "Carl, what's going on?" He goes, "Did you hear what happened?" I said, "What are you saying?" He goes, "Over the weekend, the one client committed suicide. 2 weeks, he was going to have a check for $100 million to him. He's going to have tens of millions of dollars in a donor advised fund to give away. And he committed suicide." I almost crashed my car. Money, guys, it's a tool. It's not evil and it's not good. It's a tool, but it can be used for evil and it can be used for good. This guy, when I started talking, and who knows? I don't know. I don't have answers. The advisor and I talked to the client's widow. There's no answers. But I will say this, and the advisor told me, because I was on the phone during our planning day and he was in the room. He said that day he was so stressed out because he wanted to make sure his kids knew Christ. And he thought, this amount of money is going to destroy them. And he had that feeling. And it's like, he just kept saying that. This amount of money is going to destroy my family. But my goodness, people, we have to be on the lookout. It did. I have no idea. There was just multiple things in that, but that just always struck me because we talked about suicide and the different things that had occurred. So,
how old was he, Evan?
50s.
Validates what was said earlier.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, kids were in their teens or 20s and leaving the house.
Yep.
So, but intense. And I still see, the other business partner was still very close. And it's just, it's wrecked his life.
Sure.
It's just, he's constantly on this lookout. So, having more is not necessarily a good thing. It's not. It's not. It's not say to the people that have more are living those things. I work with some great generous people that do that. I will say probably the best part about my job is I work with the most generous people in the world. So I work with people that make their AGI would be in $2 million, let's just say. They live on a half, if not a quarter of my salary at a nonprofit. I mean, they're not even reverse tithers. They're like 97% given away. And I mean, and they're the ones that are like packing their own snacks on a road trip because I don't want to buy anything from a convenience store because it's too expensive. And they just give away, but they just love it. And they're the most happy, most content people in the entire world. I say, I want to live like that. That's what I want to live like. This is very, very cool. All right. If you have notes or you're taking notes, I actually gave this talk twice to men's groups this week. But it was impactful, and when Gary asked me to speak, I said, you know what, this actually I think could play into it. There's some attributes, and I'm going to talk about a jog, so that's a journey of generosity, because I facilitate those. But I want you to get this. So this comes from a really little book, and I was going to have these books, but I gave them all away this week. So I don't have any to give to you, but you can go get it. It's like $5. It's by Chip Ingram. It's called The Genius of Generosity. If you've never read it, it's a fantastic book. It's about 100 pages. I say that it's an airplane book. You can read it on a flight to St. Louis and be done with it. I had somebody else say that you can finish it when you have your morning constitution. That's what the guy said. One guy told me, and I said, Constitution? I didn't. It took me a while to get it. So basically, this is when Chip says, he says that giving money and possessions is like training wheels to true biblical generosity. So it's the training wheels. You have to start there, but it is by far not the finish line. Most of the time we just think about this in Christian circles. Oh, if I just give more, then I've reached my point, I'm generous. No. That's the starting point. And so he gives a graduate school, if you would, of generosity. And he does it through the lens of looking at the Christmas story, which I love because we're not too far. We're still in February, so we're not too far removed from Christmas, 2 months. And so if you think of the nativity, let's look at it through the lens of generosity and kind of go from there. So, and we're going to do this as stair steps. So I'm going to start low. But our first kind of stair step in generosity is money and possessions. So that's our starting point. I already said that. Now, in the Christmas story, the person that gives money and possessions is the Magi. I have terrible handwriting, by the way. It's M-A-J-I, if you don't know how to spell Magi. So in Matthew 2, verse 11, and this is the Magi. And going into the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they fell down and worshipped him. Then opening their treasures, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. So I love the Magi, because Matthew 2 is the only place we hear about the Magi. And we know very, very little. We know that they're from the East. And we know probably that they weren't Jewish. Now, I've heard some scholars say that maybe they could be remnants of the Jews whenever the Jews were exiled in Babylon and in Persia, and that maybe remnants of the Jewish culture. But I mean, that would have been 400-500 years prior. So very, very distant remnant, if so. But what these guys knew is that they saw a star, and that star symbolized that a king was born, and by golly, I'm bringing my best stuff to go bring to the king. I love that. And listen to what it says in Matthew 2:11. When they saw him, what's the first thing they did? They worshiped him. They bowed down, they fell down, they said, this is the king. And then they gave him stuff. So I love that. So think about your act of worship. Think about the next time you see the offering plate come by at church, or when you give to ministry. Is it that act of worship? Am I falling down on my knees and saying, God, please take this? And the thing I love about this too, think about just the audacity of this gift. This is Jesus at the time as a toddler when the Magi are giving this. They're giving him stuff that's like meant for a king, like King Herod would be appreciative of this. Not a baby, but yet they still gave it, even though it didn't make sense. So I just love that act of generosity. All right.
This God's provision for them to flee into Egypt.
It did. Again, it's amazing how God equips. All right, we're going to do another stair step. Because for some of us, giving money, again, we're getting there, but one of the really hard things to give is your time, right? So in our Christmas story, there's another character that gives their time, and that's the shepherds. So the shepherds, if you remember, this is Matthew. I'll give you the verses here, so if you want those. Matthew 2:11. This is in Luke 2.
Magic spelled with a G.
Oh, it is with a G. Yeah. Thank you. Leave it to the engineers to correct me. So the shepherds.
He's really quick, isn't he?
He is, that's right. He is, not bad. Detail-oriented. Detail-oriented.
You're just testing.
That's right. If you can read my handwriting, that's just impressive, is what it is. So the shepherds at the time are the lowliest of the low. They can't even be in the city. They have to be outside the city because, by the way, if you've ever been around sheep, they stink. They're terrible. I mean, they literally, if you don't clean sheep, they will die because they will literally poop all over themselves. That's what I mean. Sheep are nasty. Shepherds stink, everything. They get outside the city. Oh, but shepherds, you have to stay with your sheep because sheep are stupid and they will literally fall off cliffs and die if you're not with them to protect them. So you need to be with these stinky, smelly sheep 24/7. All you have to give is your time. And yet the shepherds, what'd they do? Luke 2:15. When the angels went away from them into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, "Let us go over to Bethlehem and see this thing that had happened, which the Lord has made known to us." They left the sheep. They left. They said, "I will give our time, our only livelihood, to go see this thing that the angels had just told of us." And then you remember what they did after that? They went around to the city and they told everybody what they just saw. We just saw the King of Kings being born. And I love this because as you see, as we progress through these acts of generosity, there's some rewards that come along with this. The shepherds are the first evangelist. They're the first one that saw Jesus and immediately went out and told. First ones. And they gave their time. All right, our next character. Oh, shoes getting tied. Is somebody that gave their reputation. And that character is Joseph. So Joseph, in Matthew 1:18 through 24. If you remember, Joseph, so here's what it says in Matthew, let me go 19a first, just a little bit. And her husband, Joseph, being a just man. So there's sometimes translations that he was also a righteous man. So we don't know much about Joseph. We know he was a carpenter, but we know this, that being a righteous and just man, he had a reputation in his community that he probably kept the law. It was a big deal. This guy is just. He's looked at in the community in this way. Oh, then he finds out his wife, his betrothed, who has not consummated their marriage, is pregnant. Now, Joseph, under the Old Testament law, had every right to kill Mary right away. She was unfaithful. How dare her? She needs to be killed. And that's what you would do. I mean, you cannot have this sin literally enter into this small town of Bethlehem. Oh, and Joseph knows he's of the line of David too. So, I mean, come on. Like, how dare somebody do this to this man? But Joseph, remember, he said, hey, I'm going to save my reputation and hers. I'm going to sneak away. I'm going to divorce her. It's going to save face. It's going to be good. I don't have to kill Mary. It's going to be better that way. No, the angel comes and visits Joseph in a dream. And in verse 24a, Joseph did as the angel of the Lord commanded and took his wife. And Joseph became the laughing stock of Nazareth. If you don't think that's true, you can go over to Matthew 13:55. So this is when Jesus in his public ministry goes back to Nazareth to teach. And remember, he has literally run out of town because a prophet is not welcome in his own town or amongst his friends and family. And the people of Nazareth, the first thing they say after Jesus is performing miracles, they say, "Is not this the carpenter's son?" Now, that might seem like an innocuous question, but it was an insult. Is this not the son of the carpenter who was a fool that took a pregnant wife that wasn't in his own son, Joseph? Is an insult. 30 years later. Think about this, guys. When's the last time you gave your reputation for Christ? When's the last time you were bold enough to take a step and say, God, you can have my reputation because I'm going to stand for you. Or I'm going to put my neck on the line to stand up for a brother. Or to make an introduction or do something. All right, let's keep...
I'm also thinking of Ruth, the Boaz, kinsman redeemer
Yeah,
thing. It's the same
absolutely.
thing.
Yeah. All right, well, we don't stop at Joseph. We just keep on going. Next person gave up their future. This person is Mary. So, by the way, Joseph, he gave a lot of time and a lot of money to raise Jesus. Every father in the room knows that. It costs money for kids. Mary gave up time, gave up her money, also gave up her reputation because she's pregnant in town. So there goes her reputation as a harlot now. But she also gave up her future. So we know this. Mary is a teenager at the time. And she is betrothed to be married. And so, Alex, you're the only unmarried guy I know in this room. So if you are ready to get married to the woman of your dreams, and you have all these plans, and you have all these things that are exciting, and then all of those change in a heartbeat. And it says, no, Alex, actually, you're going to go do X, Y, Z. And that's not even going to look like that. All that future, all the things you had planned, totally gone. And by the way, all the guys in here that are married, and just for you, on your wedding day, that is for your wife. That is not for you. Wives get so excited about the wedding day. We just are ready for the wedding night. So it's very different. But you got to go through the wedding day. It's all the guys. Evan's recording this, so it's all good. No, but giving up your future, that is a big one. Because think about it. We have guys that are business owners and planners. I'm a planner. That is huge for me to give up my whole future to say, okay, God, I had all these things planned, and maybe it could be great plans, all the stuff I wanted, only to say, no, actually, you're going to live this other life where, yes, you're going to raise this son. He's the son of the Most High God. Oh, Mary, you're going to have to watch him get beaten and broken and die hanging on a cross. You got to watch him do that. I cannot imagine as a parent having to do that. Just the pain and the anguish. Have you ever seen the Passion of the Christ, the Mel Gibson movie? I think Mary's reaction is so important. I mean, just to look at just the heartbrokenness of Mary in that movie is just, it gets you. All right, we're not going to stop there, folks. Let's keep going.
It's got to be Jesus in the next level.
Giving up your life. So that one's, okay, yeah. Jesus giving up his life. Matthew 10:45, for even the Son of Man came not to serve, but to serve and to lay down his life as a ransom for many. Jesus had one purpose when he entered into humanity, and that is to die as a sacrifice for you and me. Now, there's things that I would give my life up for. If my wife or my kids were here and something was going to happen, I would take me instead. Do not take them. By all means. I think there's a lot of noble guys in here that would say, hey, I would lay my life down to save a brother or to save somebody. But would you save Pol Pot? Would you lay your life down for somebody that had killed millions? Jesus did.
Yet while we were yet sinners.
Yeah, Romans 5:8. That's a tough one, guys. It's a real tough one, but guess what? We don't stop there. We don't. Most people say, hold on a second, it's my life. No, there's another character in this story of the Christmas story. Your most precious possession, God the Father. I would absolutely lay my life down for my kids. I am not giving up my kids. I'm not going to sacrifice them. I'm not going to sacrifice my wife. God the Father didn't. For God so loved the world. I love that. I love the emphasis of the words that you're going to emphasize. You're going to hear the words I emphasize. For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in Him shall have eternal life. God loved you so much, He gave His most prized possession to you. Guys, I'm not generous in this. This down here is nothing. If somebody came and said, hey, I want to take your kids from you, take my house, take my 401k, take everything. You take my whole future, take my reputation, rub my name through the mud, take my very life. Don't take my kids or my family. God said, no, here you go. That's for you. That's your gift. All right.
What's those top, Mary, what's the verse that you have?
Mark 10:45. Oh, Mary, I don't have a verse, sorry. I'll give you the verse for Mary. Mary is, it's a longer one. Luke 1:26 through 38. John 3:16. All right, so what do we learn from this? This is good, but let's take a practical application from this. So 3 practical points, because we're guys, so we can only have 3 things that we can put down. So we'll start at 3. First, generosity is not so much of a virtuous act, it is a virtuous response. Okay? If I do virtuous acts of generosity, if I give a bunch of money away, eventually I am going to be self-righteous and prideful. Look at what I am doing. So if you give $1 million away, if you give $20 away, but you do it out of your own act, you will eventually become self-righteous.
And isn't it secular giving? Isn't that the popular?
That's true.
Brick with your name
That's
on it,
true.
your building.
Yeah, that's right. There are a lot of universities that have people's names on it. True biblical generosity flows out of a response and worship to God, who was first generous with us. It's not about what I am doing, it is what He did. And it's only because of what He did that I can actually respond and worship in gratitude for that. It's the only way. So out of what He did for us, that I respond out of gratitude and worship to Him. All of these people, except for God the Father, is a response out of worship, obedience, and gratitude to God. The Magi see the star, they immediately go and they worship. The shepherds hear the angels say, and they go, and they sacrifice their time to worship. Joseph, Mary, same. Out of obedience, they did, and they followed, and they sacrificed. Jesus, out of worship to God the Father, He gave His life for us. Number 2, God measures generosity by the size of the sacrifice. It's not by the size of the gift. So an easy one here is the widow's gift or the widow's mite. And this is Luke 21, verses 1 through 4. True, and this, to set up the scene, Jesus, the disciples are sitting outside the temple. Outside the temple, there's the offering box. Pharisees are going in, throwing in the coins, making a loud clang. Jesus and disciples, they see the widow. She goes up, she puts 2 small coins in the box. Jesus says to His disciples, truly I say to you, this poor widow put in more than all of them, for out of all of their surplus, put into the offering, but she, out of her poverty, put in all that she had to live on.
What was the scripture?
That's Luke 21, verses 1 through 4. This is important because in the United States, this is a tougher one. And we say, oh, what does it mean to sacrifice and giving? Here's a good example. So let's go to a rich person in the Bible. Let's don't look at the widow's mite. Because has anybody ever gave everything they've ever had, all their material possessions? I've never done that. Okay, so let's go to somebody that didn't give everything that he had, but we have an example. So this is in 2 Samuel 24:24. So this is David. It's right at the end of, this is like the last chapter of 2 Samuel. So David is commanded to go to the threshing floor and build an altar and to make an offering. So he goes to the threshing floor, and there's the owner of the threshing floor. That's David. David just conquered the whole kingdom. Take the threshing floor, heck, take the cattle and everything in the offering. He willingly gives it to him. Says, it's all yours. And David says, no, 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 no. I am not taking this gift of free, that I've gotten for free and offering it to God. It has to cost me something. And he pays him for the cattle and the offering that he has to get, that he's going to sacrifice. And that is such an important lesson. It has to cost you something. If it's an easy act of generosity, again, God is measuring this by your heart. Where are we at? All right, number 3. Increasing levels of generosity bring increasing levels of reward and blessing. So you saw this. This is kind of what Steve Trice said. You heard Marty Hepp in the flesh tell you this after he gave and he was surrendered. What he said, after I was in full submission, that's when God gave him his full vision. Same thing, and blessed his business. 2 Corinthians 9:6, whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly. Whoever sows generously will also reap generously. Go down to a couple more verses. 2 Corinthians 9:11. You will be enriched in every way so that you can be generous on every occasion, and through us your generosity will result in thanksgiving to God. Now, the 2 Corinthians 9:6 verse, this is where we see sowing and reaping. If I sow sparingly, then I reap sparingly. If I sow, give. So you're saying like this is prosperity gospel, right? I give so I can receive more, right? If I just do this little things, then God blesses me and I'm going to have this bigger. No, that's not prosperity gospel. God blesses us so that we can bless others and lead people to Him. Randy Alcorn has a great quote here. God prospers me not to raise my standard of living, but to raise my standard of giving. And again, in that 2 Corinthians 9:11, it's only through your generosity that will result in thanksgiving to God. So yes, He will prosper you. And it's not so that you can go buy a bigger house or do all these other things. No, it's so that we can point people to Him and God gets the glory. Actually, and somebody, I can't remember who said it, but the well being dry, it might have been John. You guys ever heard the parable of Desert Pete? So Ravi Zacharias, he loves using this parable of Desert Pete. So, and it was based on a old 70s, you probably know the band. What's the band that sang the song of Desert Pete? Try to put you on, yeah. But here's the parable. There's a guy that's going through the desert and he's dying of thirst. He is literally dying of thirst. And he looks out and he sees a palm tree and he goes to the palm tree, crawls up to the palm tree, and there is a well with a spigot. And he's like, oh, I'm going to be saved. And he goes and cranks on the well and all he hears is metal, just grinding. Nothing comes out, no water. But then he looks down and there is a cantina right there. It's this little canteen. And he goes, he picks it up, it's full of water. He shakes it. He's like just elated of this water and this thing. And he looks, there's a message on it. And the message says, hey, traveler, this container contains all the water you need, but you have to pour it out into the pump because there's a little leather gasket at the bottom of the pump. And when that leather gasket is totally soaked, it's going to prime the pump, and then you'll be able to pump water for the rest of your life. It's going to just bleed water out, as much water as you possibly get, but you have to pour out all of the water in the canteen Don't drink even a single drop or it won't work. You're dying of thirst. You see this. Oh, and then the note says, by the way, fill up the canteen after you're done drinking so that the next person can do the same thing. Folks, this is the parable we live in right here. You can go drink a little bit of water right now, but you are going to be missing out on ever-flowing, never-ending water if we just pour out to him right now. And we have to. We have to. All right, I'm going to end with a couple of quotes and then a video from a guy here in Kansas. But
Number 3 again.
increasing levels of generosity bring increasing levels of reward and blessing. So pour out that cantina and you're going to be overflowed with blessing and reward. Reward here on this life, you'll be rewarded in the next life too. It's kind of a double 2-for-1 special. So, internal. A lot of this stuff is in the attribute study. I would say go to attribute 6, look at that. There's some tremendous stuff. So one other thing real quick. So I lead, and Scott has gone through a couple of these. Gary's gone through these, and Marty talked about this, a journey of generosity. A journey of generosity, basically, it's a group called Generous Giving. It's a nonprofit. They're the ones that put these on. They're 24-hour kind of events. So kind of like we did here today, you go for an afternoon and then a morning session where you just talk about generosity. The best thing is you cannot give to Generous Giving. They do not accept donations. So nobody will ask you for money. It's a totally safe environment that you get to go and talk about biblical generosity and stewardship. And the best part, second best part, I guess, is that you're going to hear testimonies from people and you get to talk about them. And all of the testimonies are very clear and specific. It is not prescriptive. It doesn't say, Jim, you got to give 10%. Gary, you got to give 25%. No. It's go and pray and see what God has in your heart and say, hey, how can I take my next step in generosity? What does that look like? And just ultimately, God cares about our heart, people. And you can give everything you have away, and it could mean nothing if you don't do it with love and without God prompting in your heart. So we're going to watch one of the videos that I really like and that Gary really likes. There's my wife that's pregnant with my daughter, Hope. I know. Sorry. So this is a video, and I'll kind of set it up for you. This is a guy that Scott knows well, of Deb and Pete Oakes. So they live, how far is Wichita from here? 3.5 hours?
2.5.
2.5? All right. You guys drive faster than I do. So anyway, they're down south, Kansas. Great guys and business owners, but they have a really cool generosity story. So hopefully this is louder. These guys buy and sell businesses. And Pete was buying and selling a business, and he was trying to buy a business, and he was a manufacturing company, and he had an opportunity. And by the way, Pete will tell you that he has always been a 90-10 kind of guy, so I give 10% away. He goes, the 90% that meant going to me, so he always wanted to get it bigger and bigger and bigger, so his 10% got really big, but his 90% got really big too, and God really did a radical change and said, no. Everything belongs to him. So Pete buys this business, and it is it's labor intensive, and he goes to the prison in, where, Scott? Hutchinson. Yep, Hutchinson, thank you. So it's a prison in Hutchinson, and they have their business in the prison. And in the business, he pays the guys, better than minimum wage, pays them great, way more than what they would be getting, like a nickel a day if they work for the prison, or they could work for Pete. He trains them, they go and they do shared life experiences, so they do life lessons, all these things. So it's just time and effort that Pete just puts into this. And he said, hey, every dollar the prisoners give away, I'm going to match it and give away too. And all these prisoners are just extremely generous. And they give to things that are basically what he's found, giving to organizations that are directly to care for the victims of the crimes that they had committed. Wow. And these guys are not like drug offenders. They're murderers, like first-degree murderers, second-degree murderers, guys that are serving life in prison, 20 years in prison. Those are the guys that are working in this business. unreal. So I love their story, and Gary will send it out to you. Pete will always say the triple bottom line.
Yeah.
That's what he always says, that triple bottom line, because most people just say, what's the bottom line? How much money did you make? No, social and spiritual. Those are in there, measured.
Evan,
Yeah.
great job.
Thank you.
Let's give him a round of applause.